Hi, this is Dr. Wilson, and I'm going to go over one of the key topics for this course, which is change. And for this class, the essential question is, how does our response to change as educators and leaders impact our campus culture and students' learning experiences? And that could be, you might interpret this as, how does it impact your place of work and the employees' learning experiences if you're not a classroom teacher? So I want you to think about that, your response to change, as we move forward. Change is going to be an interactive, even though you're isolated kind of by this distance learning experience, but we're going to have you write some things down as we go through this presentation, but also record some things in the discussion area. So take notes, use your classmates as your discussion partners, and see if you can dig a little deeper as we go through these topics. So you know that some people really love change. In fact, they're always changing all the time. And then you have others who really resist change. And so I'm wondering, do you think that you can think of one of these, someone who fits each of these different types? Why do you think change can be motivating for some, while almost debilitating for others? Can you think of a time when you've been through change? It might be moving as your change. It might be perhaps changing jobs, changing schools. So that would be even change, because different schools do things differently. I've moved in 3 different cities and lived and taught, and every district that I moved to helped me learn things new, even though, so it might be from Plano to Fort Bend ISD, but I learned something as I moved to Fort Bend ISD from what really I felt was I learned the most going to Plano ISD. So think about those different things. What have you had as an experience with change? How did you take it? Was it invigorating? Was it debilitating? Think about that and what caused it to be that way. So what do you think is the significance of the following point? People like change, but don't like being changed. Did someone just pop into your head when I said that? We're going to focus on this question. How might an understanding of the human elements and dynamics of the change process help a principal or person in a leadership position with the task of significantly changing a school? So one of the books we're going to read is Schools That Change, where Lou Smith is kind of cutting apart and analyzing 8 different campuses that went through significant change for the better. So what are the human elements and dynamics of the change process that helped these principals with the task of significant change in their school, and the potential of change in your own school perhaps? So as you read the first chapter of Schools That Change, write down what stood out to you regarding the processes in an educational system. These things, if you don't write it down after you've read it, you're probably not going to remember these things. So I'm encouraging you to write down certain things and take notes and highlight certain topics. Because if we were in a face-to-face class, this would be some opportunities where we would stop and talk about it. We can't stop. You will have some discussions on change and really diffusion of innovations and all kinds of different things. But here I want you to make note, especially of the change process in educational systems. So after you've written those things down, open pages 14 and 15 of Schools That Change. What would be the characteristics of the following types of schools? So they talk about conventional, congenial, and collegial. Or collegial. I don't know. I fight with my husband over how to say that word. Do you have ideas that you remember reading? Conventional schools are characterized by dependence, hierarchy, and professional isolation. So do teachers go up to school and shut the classroom door and do whatever they want? Do not talk about what they're doing with anyone else or how could they change, or anyway, they do a good job of what they're doing, and so please don't bother me. I run a tight ship. Teachers not only use the same book, but they stay on the same page day after day, so they have their own routine that they use. So is your school conventional? Is it congenial? So they have social interactions with others. They don't shut the door, but they are professionally isolated. So what they're talking about in the hallway is, where did you eat last night? What are your plans for the weekend? But not necessarily, my students had a hard time with this. What could we do to better teach them? So it's not professional kinds of conversations. Or is it collegial or collegial? Characterized by purposeful adult interactions about improving school-wide teaching and learning. So they're very pointed discussions on how to make improvements. A covenant of learning is part of their vision, where they are focused on mission, vision, and goals. There's a charter for school-wide democratic decision-making, so they're all in the same bus. And critical study for processes that inform the decisions and their actions. Are you at a collegial school? Write that down, and then write down why you think why your school is that type. So let's look at I want you to look at the 4 dimensions of significant school change. So it's page 44, figure 2.4. So write down, what are the key elements of each of those dimensions? And why do you think Smith and his colleagues used this particular dimension in their research? Make notes of that. You may want to pause as you go back over this, because this is really just your idea of why you think Smith included these 4 dimensions. Then turn over to pages 50 and 51. Answer these questions. So how would you describe the 3 critical elements for school change? How would you describe 3 catalytic variables that influence a school's success at significantly changing? Is it its capacity for change? Pause if you need to, but we're going to move on. So what if you're working at a good school already? Maybe we don't need to change. Did you ever hear of the book Good is the Enemy of Great? Good to Great, I think is its name. Because the author of that book says being good is generally enough for some people. And you don't have to become great. But the point I want to make here, and so did the author of that book, is that we should all be shooting for great. And there are certain ways that we can go about that. So good is the enemy of great. We don't have a great school because we have a good one. We don't have a great government because we have a good one. We don't have a great business because we have a good one. So where else have you seen good to great? Good, not great examples. There's an article that is in your resources, but as you reflect on what you read, think about what are the overarching lessons regarding change that we can learn from the principles presented in your book. How might these concepts transfer from the world of business to the world of education? And other than the companies mentioned in the article, where have you seen these concepts in practice? So we're going to talk about these practices in business a little bit more, and the whole time be thinking about, now, what does this look like in the educational world? Good to great requires a level 5 leader, which is an executive leader that builds enduring greatness through a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will. Think about that for a few minutes. Look at these other levels. You can have a highly capable individual as a leader, but you're not going to be at the great level. You can have contributing team members all working together, but unless you have a level 5 executive leader, you're not going to be in a great situation. So look at these other things. You can have a manager. Have you ever had a manager as a principal? Or even an effective leader, but they don't have a blend of personal humility and professional will and drive to make it happen. So how do you get there? It's not about personality. Capitalize on who you were created to be. Level 5 leaders set up successors for success. Do you know anybody like that? So they're worried about who comes after you instead of what we're currently doing now. Display humility and modesty. Are more of a workhorse than a show horse. It says a lot. This is my favorite. Look out the window to see success and in the mirror to see failure. So it's not always someone else's fault. In fact, it's probably my fault for not giving you enough ... So how do we get there? Well, you start first by deciding who gets on the bus. then what you're going to do with them. So you look at the people around you, first decide who, then decide what. You put your best people on your biggest opportunity, not your biggest problem. That has a star in my book by that. And once the right person is in place, don't micromanage them. Trust them. Don't manage them. Let them do their work the way they want to do it and see fit to do it. So how do you get there? How do you go from good to great? Well, you first got to find a way to get the facts. As brutal as they are, you need to know what you're getting into, and the truth is hard to hear. So create a climate where the truth is heard. You know, I'm not going to write anybody else, but just tell me, what do you believe is the problem? Lead with questions, not answers. Engage in dialogue and debate, not coercion. That's important, right? Let's talk about it. You debate me on the way to go, but don't let me tell you everything to do. You conduct autopsies without blame. Is that person who's a great leader, level 5 leader, still a great leader? As you think about this, are these things reinforcing on who you're thinking about? So I want you to Google and look up the Stockdale paradox. I have it linked here, and I'll probably put it in the course. But it's about a leader. He was actually a prisoner in another country, and he lived through this period of time where he was a prisoner and others did not. And it's all the way he approached the situation. So he saw every day was a great day, and he was going to live that day. Didn't look forward. Like the people who didn't make it was where they thought, we're going to get out by Christmas. I just know it. We're going to get out by Christmas. And then when Christmas came and left, they weren't out. They had a very hard time with it. So confront the most brutal facts of your reality. Come back stronger, not weakened. So how do you get there? Does technology help? There are certain technology accelerators. Good to great organizations that think differently about tech and tech change. They believe you should avoid tech fads, but become a pioneer. That almost seems like you're talking both sides of your mouth. Technology can't be ignored, but you also don't have to be an innovator. So it could be a process change that innovates the school or the learning situation. So be thinking about that. You got to start crawl, walk, and then run. So good to great. Does great mean big? If it doesn't, some people think, well, why bother? But I'm telling you, great doesn't have to be big. It's excellence, not size. It takes the same amount of time to build something good as it does to build something great. So why not build something great, right? If your aim is good, you're not working at a maximum efficiency. So can you identify any good to great decisions in your schools or your workplace? Think about it. Write them down. Pause and think. So in future classes, think about this essential question. How can we move from learning to use technology to leveraging technology's potential to enhance our students' learning? In the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take, right? So, as you reflect on this lesson, what are you excited to learn about as we begin this week's class or this, 8-week course? What do you feel unsure about? What are you wondering about? Write down those things. We'll come back and circle around later. But I wanted to get you thinking first. So, read your chapters. Choose a school to focus on that you're going to read a chapter all about. And then work on your presentation while doing these other things. Because we're going to focus on a school that went from good to great. Or maybe it was bad to great. I'm not sure. Okay, that's enough for now.